The following program may contain coarse language, violence, nudity, mature subject matter, or scenes which may not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X Zone. This is the final hour of tonight's show. And we went, our first guest was in the United States. Second guest was in Australia. And now we're going right around, halfway around the world to Scotland, where joining me in a few moments will be Gloria Prema. And we're going to be talking about the link between science and spirituality. Gloria's book explains a theory which is a complete unified theory that unites science, particularly quantum physics, with spiritual phenomena like healing, telepathy, clairvoyance, and near-death experiences, and much more. Joining me from Scotland is Gloria Prema. And Gloria, welcome back to the X Zone. Always great having you on the show.
Hello, Rob. Thank you very much for having me back again. Nice to see you.
Thank you so much. Good seeing you too, Gloria. Tell our listeners and viewers who may not have had the opportunity of seeing you the last time you were with us a little bit about yourself.
I'm an author. I write on the subject of science and spirituality. This came about through back in, how long ago? Over 30 years ago. I had just begun my science degree. And I had young children at the time. I was doing my science degree, and I also discovered spiritual healing at the time. And I began to practice spiritual healing, and I was witnessing what would probably be called miracles. We would call miracles, in other words, the unexplainable. So then I realized, well, you know, what I was seeing, there must be science, there must be physics to describe what was happening. And because I was studying science, I then continued down that road, and I was studying science and spirituality, or, you know, what comes under the umbrella of spiritual phenomena, side by side for what turned out to be 17 years before I realized I had a book. At the end of that process, I realized I had a whole theory that could unite what we call spiritual phenomena like healing, prayer, telepathy, things like that, and unite that with science. So then at that point, I decided to make it a book and published it for the first time.
Fascinating, truly fascinating. And in a nutshell, if you could, Gloria, what is your theory?
My theory is that everything is made of light, everything, seen and unseen. I talk about seen and unseen light. So, for example, science would talk about dark matter,
right,
which they say makes up most of the universe, but they don't actually know what it is. So I'm saying the dark matter is light, just light that we're not tuned to, so we can't see it. So how I explain it in the book as, you know, I like to use the analogy of like tuning a radio, tuning the television. So you're just switching to a different frequency, and you pick up a whole different picture, a whole different sound. So I'm saying my theory is that there are harmonic dimensions of light, each with its own set of electromagnetic frequencies. And it's a case of tuning to a different frequency, and you see something different, you hear something different. And that can be achieved through meditation and various practices. So in essence, everything's made of light, and it's held together by sound.
So going back to the 60s, the hippies had it right when they were saying good vibrations, and everything had a vibrational context to it.
Absolutely, yes.
I know that was before your time, but that's my time, you know, the good old Haight-Ashbury times, and make love now or give peace a chance. They had the right idea, but I really believe that the hippies were just a little bit ahead of their times. Now, Gloria, what evidence is there that everything is made of light?
Well, my main evidence is, in quantum theory, they say that the particles, the tiniest particles, subatomic particles, are made of energy, but they never say what kind of energy because they don't really know.
Right.
And they know that this energy is constantly moving. So the particle is constantly vibrating, constantly moving. And they just say it's, spinning energy. Well, my biggest argument that it's light is because light has no rest energy. In other words, it never stops moving. Light never stops moving.
So is it safe to say that light is constant?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes. Light is constant movement. It never stops. So I'm saying that the energy that they refer to in quantum physics with the particle is actually light because it never stops moving. So that's some evidence of everything being light. Now, the other evidence is I say that everything is held together by sound.
Yes.
So the sound I'm referring to are another thing to call them is the morphic resonance templates. There's a lot of experiments have been done, and I did my own experiments in this, where you take a plate and scatter some kind of material on it, sand or powder or something, hold a frequency generator next to the plate, and the pattern forms immediately from the material. There's lots of videos online that people can see this, and it's not just 2D on a plate, it's 3D as well. Experiments have been done with 3D experiments where they were able to create shapes and forms out of sound, and you change the sound and the pattern changes. So I'm saying these templates, and I'll give evidence of the templates, are what's holding matter in place out of light. When the light wave, like any material, encounters the sound plate, it has no choice but to take its place in the pattern. And we see that in the experiments. Now, there's two other pieces of evidence I can give you right now.
Sure, please.
Marcel Vogel, who worked for IBM in the 1960s, was working with liquid crystals, and he discovered that he was able to grow crystals using sound. They actually grew from sound, particular frequency. But not only that, he saw a field, a shape, an electrical field, he called it, around where the crystal grew into. So in other words, the crystal grew into the shape of this template. So that's evidence of a sound template. And then the other piece of evidence I can give you is in the 1940s, 50s, electrical engineer Harold Saxton Burr was doing work on seeds and seedlings and eggs. And he also discovered this field, a biofield. He also called it an electrical field that was the same shape as the adult animal or the adult plant around the seedling or around the egg. And so the egg grew into the shape of the field, the seedling grew into the shape of the existing field. So that's another piece of evidence of this field, sound field, being in existence prior to the organism growing into it. So it grows into the shape of the field.
How do we relate the fact that everything is made of light? How do we bring this into the paranormal? How do we bring this into spirituality?
And what comes under the term spiritual phenomena are many things, as you know.
Yes.
Healing, prayer, that experience a lot of people have. It's very common where you just know when someone's about to call you, or you know who's on the phone before you pick up, things like that. There's many near-death experiences, things like that, which are all well documented now. So those types of things come under the umbrella of what we call spiritual phenomena. And I explain in the book how these are all based on light. For example, healing. When you're about to do healing, for someone, you tune in just with your consciousness, you tune into a source. Now, it may be different for different people. When I do, I tune into light and I see white light, and there's a divine aspect, there's divinity involved with it, but people have their own way of doing it. But so because I know of the other harmonic dimensions of light leading ultimately to the source of light, so that's where I connect. You connect to the light and then you sort of download the light, using today's vernacular. And then you see remarkable results when that's done. So that's one way. One common thing that we know of is healing and prayer also. There's been many experiments done with prayer where double-blind studies, so people praying and people being prayed for don't know who's receiving it. And the results have been consistent that, yes, it's reaching them, something is having an effect. So I'm saying because everything's light, we're tapping into this field of light, which is the light waves, which are everywhere, constantly moving. They're just everywhere. And so the spiritual phenomena, many things that we know of that happen, even telepathy, you can send information anywhere instantly. There have been quantum teleportation experiments also, which have been
really
done. Yes, and they've been able to transport a piece of information from one place to another instantly. So that shows, and quantum physics would call that entanglement.
So we're not talking about the teletransportation like we see on Star Trek. We're actually
Yes.
We are.
Well, what they've done at the moment is transferred information from one place to another instantly.
Now, so what kind of information would that be, Heather?
Well, for example, a piece of music. Professor Gunther Nimp's Cologne University transferred a piece of music. It was a Mozart piece at 4.7 times the speed of light.
Wow.
That was an early experiment. Yeah, proving that proves that there are faster speeds of light, which is also central to my theory. But teleportation, there have been a number of studies done, experiments, Australia National University, also in the University of Calgary, where they have teleported a piece of information. So that's like you could say the first step towards the Star Trek type of teleportation.
Where instead of taking information, we take a physical matter, something that is physical. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Gloria, you might have to take a short break. But before we go, what is it like? How does it feel to know that you are on the cutting edge of bringing science and spirituality together? As a professional scientist who's making all these discoveries with your research, my hat is off to you. You're one of my favorite scientists that I've ever talked to. And it's, but what is it like to be you, knowing what you've uncovered?
Sometimes it's the most frustrating thing in the world, Rob.
Why is that?
Because it's quite hard to find people who want to know about it. I do give talks when invited.
Sure.
And so the type of people who turn up for the talks, yes, they are interested. But in the population at large, yes, a lot of people are just not really thinking along those lines. But it's my passion. And I really feel that I feel I have something here.
Right.
So, yeah, so I just keep putting the word out there. And I've seen a change, actually, Rob, since I first began this work, since I first published in 2009. There's been a big change, actually, in people becoming more interested in these types of subjects. And I'm sure you have noticed the same thing.
Sure, I have. And it's because of people like you who do the research, who have the scientific credentials to back up the work that is being done. And my hat and respect is always with you, Gloria.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate
Please
that.
stand by. We've got to take a break. Exonation, fascinating lady. How can people find out more about you, Gloria, and where can they get your book?
Yeah, the book's online on Amazon, probably the easiest way to get it. And my website is itsalllight.co.uk.
All right. Gloria Prema is my very special guest. We're going to be talking to Gloria when we come back from this short commercial break. And once again, Gloria's website is www.itsalllight.co.uk. This is the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell. Gloria Prema is my special guest. We'll both be back on the other side of this break. So whatever you do, don't go away. And welcome back, everyone. Gloria Prema is our special guest. Her website is itsalllight.co.uk. Gloria, what does this tell us, and what does quantum physics tell us about other dimensions? Does the it's all light have anything to do with the other dimensions that you talk about?
Yes, because, Rob, I explain in the book that the same principles apply to all the dimensions. So, the spiritual phenomena I mentioned, the spirits and the place that people go during near-death experiences, etc. So there's evidence, so much evidence of that now, that people report the same things, that the other dimensions are real. Now, the theory follows through with explaining that because it's already been proven that there are faster speeds of light, as I mentioned. So this means that, and I'm saying everything's made of sound. I also explain that sound is slow light, because when you play any note 40 octaves higher, it produces a color. So sound and color are linked through speed. Now, so all the dimensions have their own range of frequencies within them. So the same principle follows through all the dimensions. And this is the home, I explain in the book, this is the home of spiritual phenomena.
How does your theory explain the commonly reported near-death experiences?
Yes, well, one of the common features of near-death experience is people often report as soon as they pass over, and often this is even documented, on the operating table when they pass over, and confirmed dead, sometimes for several minutes. But the common thing they report when the ones who are revived and come back, they report seeing usually a light up in the corner somewhere, which becomes like a tunnel, and then they feel themselves being drawn into the tunnel. So I explain this as, because a tunnel is a vortex, central to my theory is the vortex principle, which is the spinning of the subatomic particle of light, the spinning of light. So it's the same principle as the tunnel of light that people see, which is a spinning vortex, which draws everything into itself. It's the same principle. And that follows on through the dimensions. I explain in the book how this vortex principle is the method by which we can enter another dimension. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a tunnel that you see, but through our consciousness, we can access other dimensions. We may not see a tunnel, but that doesn't mean that there is some form of vortex principle that's, enabling us to be in another dimension. So it's the same principle. I explain the same principle through all the dimensions.
Well, how would somebody from this dimension with this physical essence called Rob get into another dimension?
Yes, and I'm not saying I've done it.
Right.
But I have studied and researched many people who have done it. And it can be done, Rob, through, like I mentioned earlier, the principle of the tuning, tuning to different frequency, like the radio or the television.
Yeah.
And the ways to do that, in yogic practice, there's various yogic practices where you can alter your consciousness, various meditation practices where you can alter your consciousness. Kundalini yoga, maybe one. Now, yes, I haven't done it, but I've had some very odd experiences. Well, I say odd, but they're not so odd now. But I've had experiences where I've experienced what I would describe as other dimensions quite spontaneously. And that's perhaps the most common way it happens, spontaneously. For example, Rob, you've probably heard of people who have been in a serious accident, and they perhaps are very seriously injured, and if they're lucky enough to recover, they come back, and they often report that as soon as the accident happens, and even sometimes just prior, so it's like there's a grace period where they're extracted from the pain of the accident.
Right.
That's quite common. And they often report seeing themselves from above. They're looking on the accident from above. They're watching the whole scene below as it's happening. So they're in a different dimensional state at that point. So it can happen through an accident, it can happen through trauma, it can happen spontaneously. It can happen, for example, one of the times it happened to me, I had been very involved in very deeply intense spiritual work. And it was as a result of that, I just woke up one night and I saw something that was of another dimension. So it can happen that way as well. It's more common than we think.
Based on your scientific expertise and your work in quantum physics, how many dimensions are there, or could there possibly be?
I don't think we know at this point.
Really?
Quantum physics says there are 11. They believe there are 11. But as I say in the book, I think there could be many, many more. Higher dimensions and lower dimensions.
Would the multiple dimensions explain apparitions that sometimes people see, where the dimension is very close, or could there be a flaw or a hole in the dimension, and that's why some people see ghosts or have interactions with entities that there's no other explanation for?
Yes, and that's how it happens. As I say, it can be spontaneous. People see something, and the way I describe it in the book is they've had a temporary retuning happen, could be spontaneous, and they may suddenly see something. Now, it can also work from the other side. So if, say, grandmother who had passed over really wanted to be seen by you, she could temporarily lower her frequency to appear in this dimension. Or it can happen the other way. We can have a temporary adjustment of our frequency and we see the other dimension.
So it's like frequency jumping.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes, exactly.
Gloria, stand by. We've got to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. And X Zone Nation, our guest this hour is Gloria Prema.
That's okay.
And her website is, are you ready for this, X Zone Nation? Get your pencils and paper, because I want you to go there and I want you to get a copy of her book. It's alllight.co.uk. We'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue investigating the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, searching for answers and demanding the truth. You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Welcome back, everyone. Gloria Prema is our special guest. It's alllight.co.uk. We've talked about distant healing briefly during the segments prior to now. How does it work? Is there any explanation on how it works and how two people can connect without being connected to each other.
Spiritual healing?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yes. Well, I have first-hand experience of this, so I know this works.
Okay.
It's also, it's also been studied. It happens, Rob, through the same principle as the teleportation, really, that I mentioned earlier. Because, when you understand that light is everything and everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
there's nowhere that it's not. Even if it's the unseen light, the dark matter, which we know makes up most of the universe, it's absolutely everywhere, which means it can be contacted instantly everywhere. The teleportation experiments, I think, prove that. And also spiritual healing. If you send with intention spiritual healing to someone on the other side of the planet, they will receive it instantly because the light is already there. And in a sense, we're not really sending it. But we are intending, with our consciousness, we are intending to send the healing, and it reaches them instantly, and they can feel.
But how do we find that one person out of all the people in the world that we want to send that healing to?
Oh, you don't need to. Yes, you don't need to find the person. So, I wouldn't send it to someone unless they asked. But
okay,
the fact that they've asked,
right,
means that they're willing to receive it. So then I would just go through my process, do it with intention, that they receive it, and they would receive it because, as I say, the light is already there anyway. And it's just, and prayer experiments have also proven this. I mean, it's the same thing, really, because you're having someone with intention connect to the source of the light, however they see it, and send it with intention, and it reaches, they're not really sending it, but they're intending, and the person receives the healing because the light is already there.
Right, because light is constant.
Yes.
Where does it's all light fit in with consciousness?
Yeah, well, I give evidence in the book also of experiments that have been done with consciousness, and one quite well-known one was the cheek cell experiment, it's called. And this was conducted by the US Army, where they took volunteers they took the cheek, scraped cheek cells from inside the mouth, put them on a slide, and they then showed the volunteers a movie of something really disturbing, like Nazi atrocities.
Oh gosh, yeah. All right.
And they measured the cells on the slide, and the cells reacted. They measured the immune response and various things, and the cells reacted as if they were the person. So in other words, the consciousness of the person was in the cells, and these cells were separated by a distance, and they reacted to as if the person was, watching the movie. Then they showed the volunteers a movie of the work of Mother Teresa, so the opposite, and measured the cells, and they again showed an enhanced immunity and reacted as if it was actually the person that was hooked up to the polygraph machine. So that experiment proves that consciousness exists in the cells, and that experiment was repeated over time and over distance, and it made no difference. The cells still reacted in the same way. The consciousness was still in the cells.
That is fascinating. Truly
And
fascinating.
that hooks up with what I was saying about light being everywhere. I equate light with consciousness because they behave in the same way.
My final question for you tonight, my friend, is why do you conclude that love is the aim of our evolution?
In the book, I describe experiments that have been done with love and how it changes our biofield, our energetic field. These have been done by the Heart Math Institute in Boulder, Colorado. They've done experiments over many years showing that when we come into a state of love, when we feel love and compassion, they can measure the it's an electrical, which is a light field around us, that when we're in the state of love, the field is coherent and expands dramatically when we're feeling love. So it's like a torus field all around the human body. And from the heart, especially, it extends outwards, a long way.
Sure.
So they've done lots of experiments on this. And the physicist Dan Winter, I mentioned him in the book, he did experiments where he hooked himself up to an ECG machine and he recorded his heart waves. Now, when he got into a state of love and compassion, the heart waves from being incoherent, in other words, all over the place, they've been settled into a coherent pattern. They embedded and became coherent. So that happens when we feel love. So in physics, we know that coherence is extremely powerful. A level of coherence would be a laser, for example. So a laser is extremely powerful. Now, Professor William Tiller did experiments on this field for many years, and he said that he concluded that when we switch on a light bulb, for example, all the photons come out scattered all over the place, so we never see the full power of the light bulb. But he said if you could arrange for those photons to come out coherently, he said the power of that light bulb would be 100 to 1,000,000 times, 1,000 to 1,000,000 times that of the sun.
Wow.
So as I argue in the book, and in the last chapter, I talk about this, knowing that through the experiments, through heart math, etc., we know that love creates this enormous field of coherent light. And then linking that with Professor Tiller's experiments and what he says about the power of coherence, I conclude that what does this tell us then about the power of human love?
All you need is love, according to John Lennon, and I certainly do agree.
Yes.
Gloria, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. Always a great pleasure. Take care of yourself, my friend, and I always look forward to sharing anything new that you find, because you are one of the hardest scientists, if not the hardest working scientist, that is making the connection between science and spirituality. So until the next time we meet, take care and blessings to you and your family.
Thank you, Rob. Same to you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Good night, Gloria. And that's it for this segment, Exonation. I'll be back on the other side of this this break as we continue here from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. Don't forget, you can always send me an email, exon@exonradiotv.com, and visit our website, www.xzbn.net. And on Channel 32, Simul TV is the X Zone TV channel. I'm Rob McConnell. Whatever you do, don't